Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 158 of Be With Me. I'm going to title today, Vipers Fastened on Our Hands. And here's my goal for today. My goal for today is that we can see the viper, that we can agree with the viper, that we can see our need for a viper healer, because only God can get us out of this problem. That we can see the character of God, that he's patient towards us, and that he is delaying bringing the results of the viper by our faith. So I want to move us from vipers to faith. I get this from a picture in the last chapter of Acts. This Acts chapter 28, verse 1. Here we go. After they just had a big shipwreck and they're on the island of Malta, after we were brought safely through, we then learned that the island was called Malta. The native people showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all because it had begun to rain and was cold. When Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and put them on the fire, a viper came out of the heat and fastened on his hand. There's our big image for today. When the native people saw that the creature hanging from his hand, so it was a good solid bite, they said to one another, "No doubt this man is a murderer," which is kind of true. Though he has escaped from the sea, justice, capital J, justice has not allowed him to live. He, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. They were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But when they had waited a long time and saw no fortune come to him, they changed their minds and said, "He is a god." Now in the neighborhood of that place, the lands belonging to the chief man of the island, named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. It happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery, and Paul visited him and prayed, and putting his hands on him, healed him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. They also honored us greatly, and when we were about to sail, they put on board whatever we needed. Okay, so no misfortune comes to Paul, which is hilarious because he's been through a horrible 2-week storm, running crazy across the Mediterranean Sea, resulting in a shipwreck. He's had his sailor authorities try to murder everybody on board by abandoning ship and leaving them. And in a perfect world, which is these people are emphasizing this, justice would be done in a proportional and specific and immediate way. And they think that a viper on Paul's hand would be a proportional. In other words, he murdered someone, so he's going to lose his life. It's very specific. It's life for a life. And it's immediate. So they kind of agree with an eye for an eye process. You killed and you will be killed. Now, here's the problem with that idea is if justice would be done like that, no adult would survive the gaze, the knowledge, the wisdom, the purity of a holy God. How long could you survive without the Lord attaching a viper to you? Would it be 5 minutes or an hour or a week or something? I don't know. It wouldn't be long. And we'd all be walking around with vipers attached to us. I mean, it would just be hilarious. You'd go to the grocery store and, people would have, 1, 2, maybe one guy would have 50 vipers attached to him. The reason is the penalty for sin is death. And it's just a matter of how many vipers we would have. So the image today is the vipers attached to our hands or arms or ears, whatever. We would all be on the way to justice, swelling and sudden falling down. And ironically, that does not happen. Paul is spared. In other words, there's the forbearance of God's justice in a visual way here. It's not immediate. There's a patience to it. And it makes me think of the verse in 2 Peter verse 3:9. Chapter 3, verse 9, 2 Peter 3:9. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward you, not wishing that any should perish. And the picture today of us all walking around with universally fatal bites of vipers. Nobody doesn't have a viper attached to them. The penalty from a perfect God view is death. And every single person is in need of a savior. Even the person that says, hey, I'm okay. Well, that's the sin of pride. That person's got a viper just for saying that. So don't misinterpret this era, however. The era that we live under is one of sin and vipers attached to us. We live under the era of judgment. We also live under the A of the delay of God's judgments, or his forbearance, the patience of God. And don't forget the character of God, that he doesn't want anybody to perish. So my goal today is to see the viper, to see that we live under an era of sin and viper judgment attached to us, that we would agree with the viper that, the penalty for sin is death. Paul said, I'm the chief of sinners. And that we are in the need of vipers and healers, that only God can get us out of this problem. In a sense, God got us into this problem because of his holiness, and our sinfulness gets us into this problem. But then his character and his plan fixes the problem by his patience to us and his delay in bringing us to judgment, so that we can non-perish, we can live by faith. So our action that saves us is faith. So today, I hope that you think of yourself walking around this earth with a viper or 2 or 10 or 100 attached to your hands, being under the judgment of sin, needing a Savior, and calling upon God for forbearance, and using your faith to help yourself. I guess that might be heresy, but using your faith to get us out of this problem. Welcome, my fellow viper carriers. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.